he had available to him at that time an enormous quantity of alchemical and mystical literature. He rose to literary distinction at a time when there was a very large output of books dealing upon the general themes of his interest. A bright young man, taking this material, could certainly have compiled the work which he produced. For this work is not exceptionally profound, it is not impossibly deep or incredibly wise. Its real place in the literature of its time is determined almost entirely by its title. Therefore, if the words Christian Rosenkreuz had been left off, this particular volume would have been only another remnant of early modern Reform literature. In favor of the André hypothesis, there are certain other points that we might mention. One of these is the relationship between André and Bacon. And here Mr. Waite really has a bad time. It is obvious from the beginning that our English author is no Baconian. He regards the entire Baconian hypothesis as completely and entirely ridiculous. Here again, I sympathize with him, but I don't agree with him. The reason I don't agree with him is that certain definite links have been established. These links Mr. Waite ignores, or else did not know them. And in either case, they represent valid evidence that there might be more to this phase of the subject than he is willing to admit. Now, the hypothesis that Lord Bacon might have been the founder of the Rosicrucian Society is at the outset not particularly attractive. In the first place, the Bacon-Shakespeare controversy has caused a powerful alignment of opinions. And, of course, most of the scholarly opinion is on the side of Willie Shakespeare. Although I see that this is now being affected by the popular purse. The Shakespearean Museum at Stratford-on-Avon is now asking for £250,000 to enlarge premises and facilities and make way for a larger tourist trade. Several individuals who might have something to do with finding the £250,000 have journeyed over to Stratford and taken a look around. They have come back, and their general opinion is that the Stratford Museum is about the largest fraud of its size in the world, that there is absolutely no evidence or proof in that museum that even one relic is authentic. And as to whether or not the building is the correct one, this is also largely open to question, and the general feeling is now that it is hardly even possible that the immortal bard ever set foot in the Shakespeare house. It's not even certain that it was built at that time, but no one seems to worry too much about it. Naturally, we may expect a considerable tempest in a teapot over this particular issue, but in all probabilities, practical considerations will prevail and the funds will be raised. Simply because whether the relics are any good or not, people are perfectly willing to come and see them and pay moderately for the privilege of sitting in Willie's chair. Now, it happens that this chair has already been sold twice and taken out of the country, and it's still there. So you can try to solve these mysteries. They're almost as difficult to explain as the miraculous multiplication of the bones of saints, which have a tendency to show up, and one saint, I believe, has already known to have had 7 skulls. This difficult situation seems also to apply to the Shakespeare dilemma. We must also realize that young people have done rather well in their time. Young William Henry Ireland, a boy of 17, forged a complete Shakespearean play, and the immortal Samuel Johnson got down on his knees and kissed the edge of the manuscript. So youth does not necessarily deny precocity. The situation then involving the Baconian hypothesis is largely colored by other matters, and we're not too sure of the ground on which we stand. Actually, there are many parallels between the so-called adventures of our father C.R.C., the mysterious Christian Rosenkreutz of the chemical marriage, and the somewhat better known Lord Verulam. These parallels were, however, advanced by the wrong people. They were advanced by enthusiasts. They were advanced by persons wearing the wrong school tie and things of that nature, and as a result were generally discredited. But whether they were advanced by wise or foolish men, the facts must stand on their own feet. That there was a link between Andre and Lord Bacon seems to be part of our basic mystery. So I might mention a little episode that some of you may remember, but which others may not have come across in our writings. Back in 1926, 7, and 8, when I was working on this large book which I did on symbolism, word came to me that one of the oldest and most important Masonic lodges in England, the Mother Kilwinning Lodge of Scotland, had a very rare portrait of Lord Bacon as an old man. Of course, his lordship is supposed to have died at 66, but this portrait was supposed to be a picture of him at much greater age. The thought intrigued me, and full of youth and exuberance, I wrote the Mother Kilwinning Lodge through their secretary and asked if they had such a picture, and if so, they would be gracious enough to send me a copy of it. They were gracious enough, and shortly after, the picture arrived. The picture was that of an elderly, bearded gentleman with a long white beard and a black skull cap, and underneath and around the picture was the inscription, Johann Valentin Andre. I thought perhaps they'd sent me the wrong picture, so I wrote back and asked them if this was the picture of Bacon, and they assured me that it was. Now, what the Mother Kilwinning Lodge of Scotland might happen to know about this, I'm not too sure, but they seemed to feel that they knew what they were sending me. And such an illustrious body would not like to be passed off lightly. Another interesting point in relationship to this situation is found in the writings of John Burton, who were published anonymously under the title of Democritus Jr. The work which he did was called The Anatomy of Melancholy. And this, as the name sounds, was a most nostalgic volume, which today would be a good textbook for certain specialists in abnormal psychology. But the book was full of all kinds of interesting notes and news, and as one man who contributed so many books and manuscripts to the Folger Library in Washington told me, he said, many of us believed that this was originally Lord Bacon's scrapbook. But in any event, it is accredited to a Mr. Burton, a very reverend gentleman of the Church of England. On one page of this book, there is a reference to Christian Rosenkreutz, or the mysterious Father C.R.C. After this is the usual mark indicating a footnote, and below is the footnote. Johann Valentin Andre, comma, Lord Verulam, period. Now, this does not appear in all editions of the book, however, but it does appear in certain earlier editions. The only work that we know that describes the tomb of Christian Rosenkreutz outside of the actual Rosicrucian manifestos is a work on mathematical magic by a Dr. Wilkins, who was a member of the society which later became the Royal Society of England, and which, as Pratt points out, was inspired by Bacon. Wilkins, in his book, describes the tomb with the ever-burning lamp in the ceiling, and calls it the tomb of our illustrious brother, Francis Rosycross. Of course, Francis was Bacon's first name, and certainly Francis is not, by any chance, a form of Christian. The manifesto says Christian Rosenkreutz. Wilkins, presumably with no typographical error in mind, calls him Francis Rosycross. There are numerous little odds and ends like this which Mr. Waite chooses to totally ignore. And therefore I am not sure that he makes a strong case to prove that the Rosicrucian enigma had no place in the life of Lord Bacon. Also, if we remember the manifestos, Christian Rosenkreutz died over 100 years before the mysterious opening of his tomb. As this tomb was supposed to have been opened in the early years of the 17th century, the mysterious founder had been dead quite a long while. In Dr. Burton's dear old book already referred to, however, there is the statement, the founder of the Rosy Cross, still living. Now this doesn't quite fit into the picture, for he couldn't be still living if the original text was correct. There seems to be no doubt in anyone's mind who really thinks this enigma through that a group of persons, perhaps definitely agents of esoteric orders, perhaps descendants through the troubadours and the temple of ancient mystical associations, did get together in the beginning of the 17th century and formed a fraternity of some kind. It has been said of Lord Bacon that he rang the bell that brought the wits together, and there seems to be something of this nature involved in our controversy. There were only certain men of this time, if they had any reputation in letters at all, who can be intimately associated with a project of this nature. The actual texts of the society, issued between 1614 and 1616, all of them are dated by their content. Even the chemical marriage is dated. It is dated to a way of life, to a point of view. And this dating definitely coincides with the Protestant Reformation. These works could only have come into existence after the rise of Lutheranism. We must therefore suspect that these books issued from some Protestant background. It would be almost incredible that they could have issued from any other background, inasmuch as the very manifestos themselves indicate that the founder of the society brought back his knowledge and wisdom from the Arabs and from the Muslims, which for most of Orthodox Europe would have been an unhappy background and not likely to cause confidence at that time. We had to have some group of intellectual liberals. Also, it is quite obvious from the text of the work that they centered around the concept of a universal reformation of mankind. They centered around the entire theory of the passing of an old way of life, that a new world was coming into existence, a world of new values, new human relationships, and that the Fama and Confessio Fraternitatis were heralding in a great world change. This world change was naturally part of the period of which we are concerned. For actually, the opening years of the 17th century differentiate the medieval period from the modern world. Of his discovery of the blood, the rise of the philosophy of Bacon and René Descartes,